Good morning. This is John from the Springs Mennonite Church, and I'm happy to be here with you today. Here we are in the middle of the week, in the middle of this story about David and Goliath. And today I want to read to you how David enters into this story. It's the 26th chapter, or 26th verse of the 17th chapter for Samuel. And here's what it says. David asked the soldiers standing nearby, "What will a man get for killing this Philistine and ending his defiance of Israel?" Well, the answer to that is in the previous verse. It says, "The king has offered a huge reward to anyone who kills him. He will give that man one of his daughters for a wife, and the man's entire family will be exempted from paying taxes." So, what is it that you get? Well, you get a big reward, you get a wife, and you never have to pay taxes. That should be enticing. Even today, that might be really enticing to some folks. Well, let's go back. So he asks what it is. And then he says, "Who is this pagan Philistine that he is allowed to defy the armies of God?" And these men gave David the same reply. Yes, this is what's going to happen. But when David's oldest brother, Eliab, heard David talking to the men, he was angry. He said, "What are you doing around here anyway? What about those few sheep you're supposed to be taking care of? I know about your pride and deceit. You just want to see the battle." "What have I done?" David replied. "I was only asking a question." He walked over to some of the others and asked them the same thing and got the same reply. Then David's question was reported to Saul, and the king sent for him. So let's kind of take a look at this. David has come to bring some food to his brothers, and he hears this giant out there screaming and hollering. So he goes over to some of the soldiers. He says, "Who is this guy? What's he doing? Who is he? Who does he think he is to defy the armies of God? And what do you get if you kill him? Well, you get this, this, and that." And so he's asking around, and his brother hears about it. And he goes to David and he said, "What do you think you're doing? You're supposed to be home taking care of the sheep. What are you asking so many questions for?" And David says, "Hey, I'm just asking a question." You can almost hear him say, "What's your problem, brother?" But the word gets conveyed to Saul that David's asking about it. I guess nobody else did. And Saul sends for him. Now, at this point of the story, we have David, who's just a teenager. Um, he's not a big guy. In fact, maybe there's nothing outstanding physically about him that you could think of. But there's something about him that's outstanding. And we'll get to that in a minute. So he starts asking, what is going on? And his brother, who's one of the soldiers, gets mad. He doesn't like him being there. Maybe he thinks David's gonna ridicule him and say, "Why didn't you do something?" Maybe he doesn't want to have to answer for his standing on the sideline like everybody else is doing. Maybe his brother's afraid that David's going to tell his dad he wasn't courageous and brave, which in those days was a lousy thing to be said about you. I don't know if it is today or not, but it was back then. So David gives away his heart. In this conversation, he says, "Who is this pagan man?" Pagan, key. Who is this person who doesn't believe in God? Who does he think he is that he's allowed to make fun of the enemy, of the armies of God? David knows about God. Later on in his life, he'll demonstrate it even more so. But here, he's talking about how dare this unbelieving pagan make fun of my God. And this motivates David to action that we'll see here shortly. But I want to contrast David and his brother. His brother is one of those who supposedly is on God's side. He's literally in God's army. But he won't stand up to what's in front of him. Now, I can't fault his brother. I mean, this guy's a giant. You got to be crazy to want to take on this man. But the stakes are bigger than that, because if you lose, you might be throwing the whole army under the bus. Now, I don't know if they would actually have to surrender just because Goliath said so. But it didn't take much for Saul and his army to run. They're scared. We read that last time. They're trembling at this giant out there. And it wouldn't have taken much at all for Goliath to win and the Philistines to come flying down that hill for the army of Saul to just disappear. Except for David. One guy. One little fellow who has the gall and the faith and the strength to say, who does he think he is? Well, that's a model for our lives. Whenever we are around impossible situations, or someone else's, we have the opportunity to say, who do you think you are? God is going to take care of this. It's that faith in God that surpasses even the worst of imagined circumstances. And that's the key to living. And that's the key to taking on the Goliaths in your life. That's the key to knowing you can stand up to the biggest troubles that you could ever have, and God stand with you and protect you. What do you think about that today? I hope you'll be back for the next 2 days while I finish up this story. It's a really neat story and has a lot of applications to our lives. If you have a prayer concern or a need, let us know. We'll do whatever we can as fast as we can to help meet your need. God bless you. I'll be back tomorrow. We'll get one more shot at this story of David and Goliath.